Like this last week has been a huge win for Putin. And I don't see how you can see it sort of any other way. I mean, America is casting its gaze on Israel. And I have profound contempt, getting back to my contempt these days, for the Heritage Foundation, Josh Hawley, and these people who are using the tragedy in Israel as an excuse to say, okay, this proves we can't help Ukraine at all anymore. And I have contempt, including I've seen it from some friends of mine who think it is infantile to talk about there being any similarity between the situation in Ukraine and Israel, and that our interests are completely different in the two places. I just think that's nonsense. I mean, I think it's really nonsense. Absolutely, Israel and Ukraine are different places. There are different issues involved. There are different equities to consider. There are different risks to all that's fine, right? That's true. But the idea that somehow they are completely different situations, I just think is ridiculous. And when I say completely ridiculous situations, what I mean is I don't think it is that the argument, how to put this, the arguments that the anti-Ukraine people, the anti-Putin people, or the pro-Russia people are making about how we have to go all in to help Israel, but we have to let Ukraine twist in the wind, I don't think can be reconciled. I think those two positions can be coherently reconciled on the terms that they're putting forward. Because look, first of all, as I said at the beginning, I support democracies guy, and yeah, Ukraine has got real problems. It's got corruption problems. It's got, electoral problems, all that kind of stuff. But it is obvious to anybody who's read anything about it, who's followed it closely, Ukraine wants to be a normal, Western-oriented democratic country. It has challenges getting there, but it is obvious that that's what they want. They are trying to, and it's what they wanted. And people say, well, they just want that because they need help because they're fighting Russia. No. They're fighting Russia because they wanted that, right? Ukraine was slipping away from Putin's sphere of influence and becoming Western oriented. And that was a profound indictment of Putin's model. And he felt he had to act now before it was too late. And so this idea that I'm inherently sympathetic to Ukraine on those terms. I'm also sympathetic to Ukraine because it was invaded. It was attacked. You got to look at both sides. There isn't a lot of context here. I have a lot of friends who get very clever in their arguments about Russia's historic sphere of influence and the Kievan Rus and all this nonsense. But what's so weird to me is that so many of the people who make those arguments are also the ones who've been telling me for the last 10 years how awesome nationalism is, and how nationalism is an idea whose time has come or come again, and that we should respect the moral vibrancy and intellectual and philosophical superiority of notions of national sovereignty and nationhood. And at the same time, they say, yeah, but Ukraine's claims of nationhood, that's all bogus. And I don't think you can reconcile those positions, right? Ukraine is a nation. It wants to be an independent sovereign nation. It wants to be an independent democratic sovereign nation. And its neighbor has sent in people who are raping children and old ladies and everybody in between. They're executing people in mass graves, putting them in mass graves. They're torturing people, and they're kidnapping thousands upon thousands of children. And so as a moral matter, I see a lot of similarities between Israel and Ukraine. As a national security matter, I see a lot of similarities between Israel and Ukraine. Ukraine, particularly if they can get out of this thing intact, will be our ally, right? We made them assurances about respecting their territorial integrity and their sovereignty when we negotiated these getting the nukes out of Ukraine. They weren't security guarantees. They were just shy of it, but they come with some serious moral obligations, if you ask me, and some serious moral hazard if we renege on them. Plus, again, Russia's the bad guy. Russia, I didn't know a conservative who disagreed with Mitt Romney in 2012 when he said that Russia was our top geopolitical foe in the world. I still think, for right now, well, I guess China is a bigger geopolitical foe now. I think that's probably fair to say. But China at least is being subtle about some of it. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. While Russia is just openly trying to undermine Western democracies. And that gets me the reason why I brought this up is, so we have this, as I put it, I've heard it from other people. I didn't coin it, but it's this axis of a-holes. I've talked about this a few times on here, where there's something about how decent countries, decent democratic liberal countries, just really don't like hanging out with indecent, tyrannical, authoritarian countries. And it doesn't mean that we don't have our problems with French people or Canadians or whatever. And it's not like, I have an abiding love of the Belgians, but we tend not to go to war with each other. We tend to work things out amicably. We tend to go on vacations in each other's countries. We can watch a lot of each other's Netflix shows and all that kind of stuff. We're a club, right? We dig each other, and we like some countries better than other countries. That's fine, but we don't resort to violence with decent countries for the most part, right? I mean, I think that's been true for a long time now. And so the jackass countries, the bad countries, they sort of get stuck at that table in the back of Delta House because no one else wants to hang out with them. And to be more blunt about it, Russia has been cozying up more and more and more with Iran. Iran has been supplying Russia with these, Shahed drones. There's a deep symbiotic alliance between the two now. They're both evil, crappy regimes that are, to the Iranians' credit, the Iranian people hate their regime, I think, more than the Russian people hate theirs. But regardless, they are bad governments that believe in doing terrible, evil things. And Russia's got a big problem because the West is supplying the arsenal of democracy to Ukraine. And it strikes me, again, it's pure conjecture at this point, but kind of obvious that it is a worthwhile line of inquiry to say that Russia said to Iran, hey, you guys are the shot callers for Hamas. Could you, do something that requires America to take its eye off Ukraine? We'll get our useful idiots in the West to say, go help Israel. Now this proves that we have to cut Ukraine loose. And it'll distract the West. It'll sow even more domestic discord. And it'll be a win-win for us, right? And, and that doesn't, I generally don't like the conspiratorial sort of cui bono kind of logic. Well, who benefits from this? And then you just reason backwards. I generally reject that kind of thing. Or it's not that I reject it. I just think it's a useful but often insufficient and occasionally misleading way of thinking about things. But in this context, who am I being unfair to here? It's not like Putin would have a problem with it. It's not like the Iranian regime would have a problem with it. It's certainly not like Hamas would have a problem with it. And so asking who benefits here seems worthwhile.